Mayor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Library Board of Trustees will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to attend the meeting may do so in the following manner: southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will put on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, we are in. We have a quorum. Do we want to wait? Oh, here's Amy. Good. All right. Ryan, is Mary showing up today or no?
Honestly, she may have been planning on it, and with all the connection issues, I sent her all of the same information that you guys got.
Okay.
I know she generally goes in through the town's website. So,
all right.
I mean, I'm up to date, I guess, as much as I can be on the construction. So I can go over it if she's not here.
Okay, that's fine. I was going to move it up if she was coming in so that she could get finished and leave, but probably you and Janet can fill us in if she can't make it. So why don't we start with the first agenda item, which is review and approve the minutes of the meeting November 17 and also probably December 1. How's that? Any edits or emendations for the minutes of the meeting on November 17th?
No.
Okay, and how about edits on the meeting of December 1st?
I had one, I guess it's half question, half comment.
All right.
When we were talking about the voting for the purchase of the limestone, and I thought we specifically wanted to keep the number a little vague in case it came out a few dollars differently, but she put in the exact amount, the $26,266.
She had a reason for wanting the exact amount in.
Yes.
That's down the contractor, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it came down to
okay.
the contractor because I said, what if we leave a few extra $100 in there? And she said, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that commits.
That's right. Sorry, I forgot that part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Okay, so do we have any emendations or corrections for either of the minutes?
I don't.
Okay, anyone want to move to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, second? Okay. All those in favor, here we go. Trustee Davis.
Aye.
Trustee Ekberg.
Aye.
Trustee Landry, aye. Trustee Maney.
Aye.
Trustee Reagan.
Aye.
Trustee Estani.
Aye.
Okay, both minutes are approved as written. All right, so our second item for today is reports and discussions. That would be the director's report, Ryan.
I honestly don't know what you guys want to start with. I sent you guys a lot, so I'm pulling up my own report. We could wait to see if Mary shows up. I don't think the construction issues are time sensitive. Obviously, that's going to be a big part of this afternoon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to talk about the copy machine. I think we can go into that pretty quickly.
All right.
Let's do that.
So as you recall, I believe Kim and I came to you in February of this year talking about the library getting a new copy machine. We're now in December, and that never happened. We were working with the town's IT director, Tom LaFlamme, who has since moved on to a new position. Most of the issues with Xerox that we were trying to resolve, there was some confusion about sort of going over to a public sort of payment option for people versus more of just having staff use it, which is primarily how the town of Southborough uses copy services internally. None of those issues were resolved. I tried to work with the Xerox rep. There were a couple different Xerox reps we worked with over the several months. Finally, I talked with Kim Ivers about this extensively over the past couple weeks. Who she's frustrated, so am I, as you can imagine. So we wanted to start exploring alternate options, which I talked to Brian Ballantine about, who started assisting Tom and I when it came to sort of the financial questions regarding the contract. We ended up getting Aldo reviewing the Xerox contract at one point. We found that some of the legal, they were bringing up some legal terms and ordinances that related specifically to California that had nothing to do with Massachusetts, because I guess that's where Xerox is based. So, you know, we gave them that feedback. They weren't going to alter their contract. So that I think we're kind of at an impasse there. So I reached out to a bunch of other local area libraries. Really, I put something out on the CW Mars listserv, and we wanted to talk with people who we knew locally. So we contacted 2 reps. We ended up having a really good conversation with the rep from Canon. So that is the quote that's attached. Now you got 2 quotes. One is an option for if we lease it for 36 months. The other option is if we outright buy the machine. That was, if you recall, it was a long time ago. We had this discussion in February, and I stated my preference to purchase the machine outright. Really, at this point, I don't think it makes a difference. We really just want a copy machine. We're going to need one when we reopen. Some pluses with this, looks like they can do cash payment and credit card. With the Xerox option, we only had credit card. They weren't able to add cash. It does look like there's going to be an additional charge from, like, basically a subcontractor called Jamex. They manage the coin operated slot. So if you do remember the library's copy machine from pre-COVID, we had a coin operated slot, and that was a Jamex. They're standard with copy machines like this. There will be a monthly charge of $25 per month, and there's an initial setup fee, which I haven't gotten yet. So that's in addition to the quote.
So Ryan, my question is the money that's collected in the Xerox machines goes to the general fund, right? Not to us.
This is for the Canon. We're now talking about a Canon machine because we're going to work with a new vendor.
Yes,
so,
but the the Jamex machine, all the money that comes into from the public using it goes to the town's general fund, right?
That's my understanding, is that the same way that we would collect fine money and we would turn it into the town as part of the weekly cash turnovers, we would do the same with the copy machine.
So I guess my question is, did the town pay for the Jamex machine before? They
did not, because we had sort of that arrangement that Kim had worked out with Rico. So they did not previously pay, but Rico managed all of the financial cash payments. So the previous Rico machine didn't have the ability to take credit cards. So
we're not talking about a significant amount of money that it brings in, are we?
No, it probably break about even.
But we don't get that money, or do we get the operating costs?
We don't get the money.
No, we don't get it. It goes right
to the operating. Okay.
I think. Go ahead, Amy.
Is the $25 a month is purely to accept credit cards, or what?
It's to do both. It's to both accept the credit card payments and the cash payments. The payment pillar, I don't know what else to call it, the sort of the sub payment area is sort of an add-on to the machine.
Okay. So there's no way to do this without, that's a lot of money just to take. How many people use this? Like, I'm just wondering
Yeah, is it multi-page documents that people use it? I mean, the patrons?
Kim and I estimate that the copy machine probably gets used we probably make somewhere in between 200 to 300 copies on an average month. I would say about 3/4 of that is the library staff making internal copies. So it's sort of the way that I think of it is that the library has a copy machine that we also let the public use. I mean, it's a publicly accessible machine. It's available to patrons when they want to come in and make copies, but sort of the primary user of the machine is the library staff. Kim frequently uses it to copy the program calendars, and especially if she's doing some sort of summer reading craft or coloring page, she can do high demand copying on the copy machine.
Do you know if people usually use it? I used to use it when I didn't have my own copy machine, when my kids were little. But do people usually use it to copy things that they're seeing in the library, or are they just coming in to use the copier? Do you know?
I think there is an uptick in usage around the spring because people do frequently, we've been getting less tax documents because we're sent less by the federal government. So we do have a binder with sort of master, a master forms. And then people you can go online to the IRS website, but
Right.
many people prefer to go into the binder and make copies based on that. So I will say we have successfully navigated for 10 months working around not having a copy machine because we've been using the printers that the library has. I don't think we can do that forever, but we can continue going for a little while. One of the questions that I can explore, which I think Amy kind of brought up, is if this money is going into the town's general fund, as far as the Jamex machine, would the town's finance department, how exactly would that be paid for? Does the money that goes in, coming in from the public, would that go towards that $25 a month? That's a question I don't know the answer to yet because we didn't do this previously.
Okay, so it seems to me that there's kind of three issues here floating, which is one is the Jamex machine subcontracting, which I think it's good to have a photocopier available at the library just for the public to use. Also, I think that's a good thing. I think it's good it does credit cards and money, but I think that needs a little more exploring. And the other thought I have is, do we want to lease it or do we want to buy it?
Let me get my calculator.
Yeah, Janet.
If we buy it, the maintenance contract is good for 3 years, in the same way that the lease term would be good for 3 years.
The other libraries nearby. Go ahead, Kim. Go ahead.
It looks like the overall cost is about $1,400 more if we lease it. Is that right, Ryan?
That's what I saw too, Kim.
Over 3 years. Over 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, over 48 months, the lease payment is $276, which is about $1,468 more than buying it outright.
So how long do they last?
Last one was 20 years, right?
Right.
I think we would take really good care of the machine. It would be under a maintenance contract. We would have to evaluate keeping it on what will most likely be an annual maintenance contract in the 4th year. So
any towns around that have had it for a long time that can report back on how it's
Northborough has used, I don't know that they're going to use the exact same machine that we had. They tried to find us something that would fit our needs. One thing that patrons do ask for is a scanner. So the copy machine will also be a scanner too. So that's kind of exciting because that's something we've been asked about a lot. So I don't exactly know. I unfortunately haven't gone into Northborough to see their machine. That would have been, I think, part of the process. But the rep came highly recommended by like 3 different libraries. We spoke with the Northborough library at length about this. They have nothing but nice things to say. The rep is very attentive. If there's a problem with the machine, again, during sort of normal times, she would be on site and she would help coordinate that. There's also going to be training that we set up for staff. So just on the general usage of the machine. On its time of life, Marguerite, I don't know. I think generally about 10 years is what you look at for like a machine like this. As Janet noted, we definitely made the last machine last longer than that. So we'll take good care of it if we get one. I mean, this is a big purchase for us.
The other thing I just wonder is, I don't know about you guys when you've bought any like washers and refrigerators, their repairmen will tell you, they used to expect them to last, 20, 30 years. Now they're like 8 if you're lucky, just by the way they're made. I don't know how these are. I think we're always buy people. I have cars for 10 years, so I don't have trouble, but I don't have any problem buying it. I just don't know the expectation of the life these days on things. Hopefully it will be 20 years, but I think it's still better to buy it than to lease it.
I go that way too, in general.
Can we go back to the money that it makes through credit cards and cash sales going to the general fund? How would we not be receiving that ourselves, the library?
We just.
I can ask Brian, but when we do cash turnover deposits for fines and for items that people pay in person, that money does, I mean, you gotta think about it in the general sense, Jane, right? Like we get money from the town every year, right, in order to fund our budget. But as far as like the direct payments that go into lost book fines, that gets turned over to the town's accounting department.
Yeah.
And Brian keeps track of that. So it doesn't, a lot of people get confused. They do think that lost book money, or if you pay a late book fine, that directly goes into buying books.
No,
And
I know it doesn't. That doesn't, yeah.
Ryan, what
Yeah.
about availability timetable? I mean, it seems to me that we can't go on like this without one. How soon can you get one if we vote today to do either the lease or the buy?
Well, if we come to if you come to a consensus as a board, the Canon rep her name is Laura. She's interested in trying to finalize this before the end of the year, because their fiscal year is at the end of December. So she's highly motivated to make a sale. Yeah. And we've been, I know I'm hitting you guys with this right now, but Kim and I have been working on this for the past couple weeks. And I will say there were a lot of things about the Xerox. We were trying to kind of work with the town, and we're trying to be under that umbrella. But there were things that clearly were not working pretty early in the process. And then that only, I think, deteriorated. This seems like a much better solution. And then our rep has established experience working with other libraries. So I think that is helpful.
What was the cost of the other one we were going to buy? Just about.
The Xerox one was a little bit cheaper, a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
You've probably
It might have been more like a couple. It might have been about $1,000. I want to say it was 10,004. Does that sound right to everybody?
It does.
So this is more, the machine itself would be more expensive, but it can kind of do all the things that we need it to do. The other one couldn't.
Right.
I
So
would suggest we go ahead and buy it.
yeah, I agree. I think you've done your homework, Ryan, and I think buy sounds good. Do we want to take a vote? Would you like us to take a vote, Ryan, on this?
I mean, you previously voted on it. I would re-vote it because it's 10 months later and the cost is more. So I would recommend, before you take the vote, to also pay for this cost out of state aid. And I don't know if you want to have a discussion about that prior to doing it.
That's what we were going to do with the other one.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody got any questions about using state aid for it?
No, I think we should stay with our decision to do
With
that.
our plan. I agree. Okay, so I'll move that we proceed with, or that we agree that Ryan proceed with purchasing the Canon copy machine in the amount of, what is it, 11,779. Should I just go to 12? Should I just go to 12, Ryan? What's better?
I would just say that you want to proceed with the purchase of the copy machine with the purchase of it, not the leasing option.
Okay, I move that we agree with Ryan that he proceed with the purchase of the Canon copy machine and use monies in state aid to do that.
And I will, just because Mr. Litt asked a question in the chat, I am going to follow up, Mr. Litt, with Brian Ballantine, and we're going to see exactly how that is more sort of the treasurer collector department is on sort of managing the money piece of it. So I'm going to try to work with Brian on this and then come to a mutually beneficial resolution. That's the goal.
Okay, good. So shall we vote? Trustee Davis,
Aye.
trustee Ekberg,
Aye.
trustee Landry, aye. Trustee Maney,
Aye.
trustee Reagan,
Aye.
trustee Yazdani.
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Good,
Did you guys see the chat question from Tim Litt?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so Janet, I'm gonna work with Brian on that. And
okay.
then we'll try to, I think you need to have a payment pillar. I've never seen a copy machine that's just a walk up and then you make copies on the honor system. Somebody could print a book and we couldn't stop them.
So once,
So
once you found out it was free, yeah, it's much more of a big draw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the payment method also restricts the amount that you can copy at one time. So that's part of the reason why you have that mechanism there. But Brian and I are still sort of actively working on that. He just got a resolution with the JAM because we have to work separately with the JAMX rep. So he did that yesterday and he sent me some information that Kim and I are still reviewing. But we'll proceed with the purchase of the machine, and then the JAMX option is it seems like it's very reasonable. So.
Yep.
Good. Thank you for doing all that work on it, Ryan and Kim. That was great.
Good job.
Other Kim, but there we are. Okay, so anything else in the director's report you want to focus on right now?
I think everything else was fairly self-explanatory, unless you guys had any questions.
Just another timetable question, Ryan, the small and rural library grant proposal, what's the turnaround timetable for that?
I find out in mid-January if the
Okay.
library was awarded money. So pretty quick.
Good. Okay. What about the expense report?
Any questions? Okay, I didn't take the notes off the column that I did do, Kim, but I did add them to the other side too. So the notes are just in twice. And I say that because I was having difficulty removing the notes. But that's.
I can help you with.
Did you want additional notes in any of the other fields? Like, for instance, we're not using in-state travel money, but I thought it was understood why, but I can put in a note about that next month if you want me to.
No, I think it's fine as you have it, and just if things make sense to you to add, then go ahead and do that.
I like to, the way I'm approaching it is more if we're spending all the money, we should put a note. And then if we're not spending the money, a note we might not need it, but I can do it for everything if we want.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay, so we're good on that. No questions. All right. How about moving on to item number 3, the library annual report submission?
Sure.
This goes into the town meeting warrant, correct?
So it goes into, the warrant is all the warrant articles for town meeting. But in addition to that, Lori Esposito from the Board of Selectmen office puts together an annual report, which is a completely separate document. But you're thinking of it like that, Marguerite, because it also gets distributed at town meeting.
Town meeting, right.
So generally people see the physical copies and the library receives the physical copy of the annual town report at
right.
the meeting.
That's a prodigious piece of work, Ryan. Do you create this on a de novo basis, or is this simply updating of one that's been in place for some time?
So there is sort of a standard format that I use because the town uses a standardized format for the annual report. So I do update a lot of the features year to year. I will say this took me probably a little bit longer than prior years because typically I'm just updating some statistic information and then I pull out maybe a couple, like 1 or 2 new programs or new initiatives that the library did. This year, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because there were some rewrites, and the library program piece in particular it's actually slightly longer than previous years because it took more time to kind of explain what has been going on. And then I really did try to capture, I think, everything in the last year that we've tried to experiment with. It was also hard because in January, February, and March, the library did several successful in-person programs. Like you'll recall, we did the legislative breakfast we did the Cultural Arts Council award ceremony. We had a number of very highly attended sort of like early spring events. So I didn't want, I tried to do a snapshot of the whole year. So I wanted to include those as well. So it was a little bit difficult. And then I did want to note on the last page, wide statistics obviously were a little bit different this year.
Well, I'm a rookie here, but I have to say it's a nice piece of work.
Yeah.
Thanks. It takes me a while to do that. So
Sure.
but
Any
it's if
questions? Yeah. Go
oh
ahead.
sorry, you go ahead, Marguerite.
No, I just want to say any questions from any of the board on it.
Nope, it's good.
Okay, looks good. Yeah, it is. It's beautiful, Ryan. It's beautiful work. All right, then let's move on to the memo to the advisory board, which we are meeting with, advisory committee, which we are meeting with tomorrow.
What time, is that at 6:30?
I
Yes.
think so, yeah.
Is that our call time for the start of the meeting?
It's I have requested for that Kathy Cook put us at the beginning of the agenda, if that's possible.
Okay.
So it sounds like 6:30 hard start. Okay, Ryan, anything you want to explain to us about this? Also, another fabulous document, I may say.
Amen. Amen.
Really good.
I feel like this one you guys might have more feedback on though. So don't I wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable too. And I did note to Kathy that the memo was sent out, the request for information was sent out 3 days after our last regular meeting.
Mhm.
And then the library was scheduled to go before advisory. Our next regular meeting was the day before. So there wasn't a lot of time other than calling a special meeting, which you guys already had to do because of the construction project in reviewing this memo and looking at the information. So I wanted to put together something for you guys to review. What I noted to the advisory chair is that if the board doesn't like something in the memo that I wrote or wants to add something, that I would include an addendum to advisory after this meeting.
I think that what you meant, this is on page, this is the last page, your discussion about Kim and her title and her compensation. I think that's, I mean, I agree with the thrust of what you said. Does that need to be fleshed out a little bit more, you know, or is that inviting more questions than is necessary, you know, such as, you know, how much of a compensation adjustment?
Good
Well, I
question.
mean, I think that's to be determined partially by this board and then also the personnel board. I think what the chair was asking for in this memo was kind of long-term planning. And I will note that kind of the two things that I brought up as far as what we would like to do, if we, this is, I think I kind of think of it as almost the unlimited money question, right? The library has unlimited money. What are you going to do? Right? And there are a couple personnel things I think I would like to look at long term. They may not materialize, but those are things that I think we should look into and that we should pursue. And I think with, obviously we're talking about the teen librarian in this meeting because we're kind of ready to go with that. Obviously looking at Kim's role and a discussion about that is more of a longer term, sort of a longer term issue, I would say. But
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I would just say, you know, we tried to have an assistant director. It seems like forever ago, but it was only, I think, a year and a half ago, right? She left in August of 2019. And Kim, especially during the pandemic, I mean, it's not just because of that, but during the flood and then during COVID-19, she has been so responsive, so flexible. I noted in the town report, she completely redid the way she did summer reading. And then we ended up winning a grand prize from the MBLC because we had one of the most successful programs. I think Kim is a valued resource. I can't imagine running the library without her. And I just think that should be reflected.
Okay, so I had 2 points. One, the MBLC prize wouldn't be a a problem to mention just for one little phrase in here, which is it's a kind of fabulous prize. The other thing is the definition of the children's librarian role. It is true that Kim has done these phenomenal things, but the job description will last longer than Kim. I mean, in 20 years, when Kim has retired or whenever she decides to retire, is that enlarged job description going to be fillable by another children's librarian?
Maybe we should have an assistant director position and move Kim into it.
We
And
do technically have an assistant director position on the books now.
Right.
So
because in the future, if she retires, maybe maybe the teen librarian that you've had would move into that role. And, you'd have different people could fulfill a role as well as whatever they had been doing.
Would Kim have any
I
interest in
think,
that?
sorry, Amy, what?
Just said, would Kim have any interest in that?
I've had some preliminary conversations with Kim about formalizing some of her administrative responsibilities that she is receptive to. So I don't want to speak for her, but I think we would have to have some sort of option available for her to either accept or not accept. So.
Well, she surely deserves something because she's been fantastic.
Well, also, you want to recognize and compensate people for what they actually do, as
Yeah.
long as it's not a super short-term thing, but she's really your backup.
Yeah.
She's also clearly part of the administrative team. I think when I'm making decisions, Kim is really the first. I mean, Marguerite, not that I don't want to talk to you first, but I think logistically, when we're looking at like how the library is going to work, especially during the last couple months, Kim is my first conversation.
As she should be. And she took over, she was interim director, 3 or 4 times. So, she definitely has the qualifications to be assistant for sure.
And I think children's services is a large part of what we do, at the end of the day.
So what about asking her if she wants to be an assistant director?
Well, we're not, for FY22, we haven't budgeted for a pay increase for Kim.
Right.
So that's one thing to think about. I think we do need to look at this more long-term. I think if we're gonna make a change for compensating Kim or for changing her title, I think those should go in tandem. I don't think we should do one and not the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and part of it is talking to the personnel board too. We would have to kind of put that out there and say, this is something we want to do long-term. But I would say probably not for the next fiscal year. We'd probably be looking at FY23. So this would be a budgeted increase potentially in the next year.
That's a long time for someone to wait to be recognized for the job they're actually doing.
Yeah, really.
That seems a little.
I think we should try and do it for this coming year. It's budget time.
Okay.
I guess ask Kim if she would like the title, and then go, because you're right, Janet. She's been phenomenal, and it's to wait almost 2 years for it, and then it's not quite certain whether it'll happen or not.
And she's certainly been the de facto assistant library director.
Yes, yeah.
Did I recall though, Ryan, a few meetings ago, you were saying that she was inclined to continue to remain titled only as the children's director? Has that changed with her a bit?
The children's librarian, I think that's part of the discussion. I think if Kim did move into the assistant director role, she would also still be in charge of children's services.
Yeah, she could be both.
Yeah. I don't think I'm interested in having her move out of that role.
No.
So
No,
I
not
don't
at
think
all.
she'd be interested in moving out of that role. Right.
Do you need to talk to her about it then before you?
I'll make Kim my next conversation. We have had an initial discussion about it, but it was quite a while ago.
And then it's not going to be easy to go back to the town and say, oh, and we have a further change to the budget, but
Well, I mean,
bad guy.
to be blunt, we finalized a budget last year and then the town asked us to change.
Right.
So this might not be, again, I don't know how much money we're talking about. I think that would
I think it's
you
two
know,
separate questions because one recognition is important too. And giving her the title and the acknowledgement, I think is terrific. If we can also compensate her, that's great.
okay.
So I guess you have a conversation with her and then we'll know what actually she would like on this and maybe we can revisit it. But what do we
Sure.
want to say at advisory tomorrow? We want to say that this is what we're considering?
I mean, is Janet said, let's try to explore it this budget cycle. The sense I'm getting from the board is to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I will explore trying to do it in this budget cycle.
Okay.
Excellent.
Whatever steps are necessary. I'd go ahead with whatever steps you can get done. You don't have to come back to us. I would think you don't have to come back to us for that.
But
Now,
I mean,
the other-
any sort of promotion, right?
Mhm.
Like let's look at this as a promotion or a grade change in the SAP. That
Right.
would have to get approved both by this board and personnel.
Right.
So
The other part is the job description of the assistant director would not fit. The current job description would not fit what she would want to be doing. So that might have to be, that might be an issue that would need some
Rewrite
modification.
it. We'd have to rewrite that.
Yeah,
Can you send that to me, Ryan?
yes, there's a link actually in the advisory memo. And there's links to all of the job descriptions on the sorry, not the towns,
Okay.
the library's website. I
Okay.
will send you those. So both the assistant library director position. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not in the memo because we don't have an assistant director right now.
Yeah.
I'll send you the assistant director one.
maybe
I have
send it
that
to
as
the,
well.
maybe send it to all of us, just so we can be refreshed when we go into the meeting.
Sure.
Because I think Jane is right, we would need to look at the wording on that because some of those things like writing grants and so on, and taking over for you when you're not there, even though even
We
though
worked
Kim's been
hard on
doing.
that description, but it was tailored toward Aline.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So anyway,
Kim may,
I would-
The way you should write job descriptions. You write job descriptions for the needs of the organization.
Okay, but this was a new position and we had a person in it, or we were
Mhm.
looking for a person to put in it.
yes.
Kim may have some suggestions too. She's been there so long that she has a long view on what can be needed, not just what she offers, but
Mhm.
that whole position, I would think.
I think the description that Jane, I'm trying to think, Jane, who worked with you on the
Amy
description?
Bacris and I worked on it.
And I know you worked with a member of the personnel board on that too.
Yeah,
I think that
Jay, um,
Jay Dietz, yeah. I think there's ways to integrate some of the children's services roles into the existing job description that would be very easy.
certainly, yes. I just
Yeah.
saying it needs to be reworked. We had it to a nice tight size.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Jane.
What?
Sorry.
I know, no, it'd be easy to add in and tailor it, but Janet, what you said, it shouldn't be written for the person.
Right. So what ideally you do is write it broadly enough so that you could have an assistant director who is named the assistant director, and they could also be in charge of any of a number of functions. One could be the children's thing, one could be whatever. And then if that person changes, the next person might have a different focus, but they
Yeah.
would still fulfill a lot of the things that are assistant director kinds of
So
things.
Aileen's focus was the teen room.
Right.
So that if that could be the children's room, then maybe
Right.
that would
Yeah.
work out.
I don't think it needs big changes, but I haven't looked at it in a while.
Yeah.
So
And okay, so we'll look at that and we'll all have it at the tips of our tongues for the meeting tomorrow, maybe. We'll see what happens.
I mean, at the moment, we're just exploring the possibility, right? It's something
Yes.
that it seems like the board wants to support and we want to pursue.
Yes.
So,
The main thing is not to expand what Kim is doing, but to give her credit for what she's already doing.
acknowledgement. for
Yes. Yeah.
Job well done and to have her keep doing it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Behind this, Ryan, you seem pretty hesitant.
no, I am anticipating that I think a lot of people thought the library's budget was ready to go, and we're just throwing a little spice into this budget year for everybody. So I'm smiling right now. I know some people will they would, I mean, this would potentially be additional money. So
Sure.
that's
Yes.
just,
The question is how much money?
that's,
5,000?
yeah. So that's
10,000?
something we need
That's
to,
the personnel board gets a vote on that. There's probably a procedure.
yeah.
Right.
I think actually, yeah, if you change certain number of grades or something, you get, right? I can't remember what it is. I've read it at one time or another.
Okay. Well, any other comments on this, or shall we move on to the
I've got
teen
one just
librarian?
quickie that I was struck by your last sentence, Ryan, talking about not having an administrative assistant. And my reaction again as a newbie here is that you are your own administrative assistant. And I'm sorry about that. And
That's not, yeah.
this is a down the road issue, but my reaction to that is that your overall efficiency, if you had an administrative assistant, would be perhaps greatly augmented, because you got a lot of tasks that fall in your lap that that could be done quite ably, it seems to me, by an administrative assistant. So I'd like to think that this is something we can think about a year hence or so, but improving the mix of what you do and is something that I think we ought to revisit.
And thank you for saying that, David. I don't think it's necessary for me to have an administrative assistant. The
Really?
reason why I wanted to make advisory aware of this is because there were a lot of discussions in the budget cycle last year about all departments except for, I think, one that was requesting a full-time admin assistant. They said all other departments have one. So the library doesn't. I just want advisory to be aware of that we are another town department and that we don't have one. So I know a lot of the makeup of advisory is new, and I'm sure people maybe don't remember that discussion, but I would just say, like, when people say all departments have this in a budget cycle, I didn't have an opportunity to tell them that we didn't have one. So it never came up.
Yeah.
Now
well,
you do. Now you
Now,
have.
now you do, right? All right, how about moving on to the description of the teen librarian?
Janet and I worked hard on this, but
Yes.
if you have feedback.
It already has my input.
I have one comment. I think the job responsibilities and requirements all seem fine. It just seemed that it was slightly out of line with just the overall position overview, which focuses on coordinating and acquisition of the books versus, I would think in the overview, there would be, the first sentence would more encapsulate all of the job responsibilities. So, I mean, when you read the overview, it seems very tactical in terms of managing the inventory versus, a teen librarian needed to create and manage the teen experience for our library. That was the only comment I had.
And I think you that was something that Janet had given me some feedback, is the position overview section. And I actually agree with you, Kim. That some of that language was something I struggled with in the description. And I do think, to me, this position is a little bit more about programming and about sort of being kind of an outreach person in working with the schools. I think we hit all of that later in the description, but I don't think it's necessarily captured in the overview section. So maybe it needs an additional line in there or a rework of the first line so that it's reflective of that.
So why not just add in comma, including programming and an outreach period at the end of the first sentence?
Would that do it, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, if you think that would serve the needs, like, are you looking at this position being like Kim or teens?
I think with children's services, right? Parents bring the kids in And that is, it's almost like we have a captive audience. Not that the kids don't want to be there and they're not having fun, right? I think engagement with teenagers is harder. I think sometimes you have to go to events in the high school. I think you have to be present as far as doing outreach. And then I mean, the whole idea behind the Idea Lab in the teen room was to make it like a feature so that kids would be interested enough to come check out the library. But if they're not coming in, if they're coming on their own, their parents aren't necessarily bringing them in. How do we, I mean, it's almost like Kim's effective at marketing what she does, but I feel like with the teen position, they're in an uphill battle, right? It's really about marketing and promotion. It's really about getting the word out. And maybe it's not just the schools, maybe it's working with other partnership groups and finding areas where kids are to let them know about the library. And the goal is to get them to come back. I mean, it's not like this person is going to be spending most of their time out of the building, but I want them to be spending some of the time, I think, doing outreach and then trying to market and promote both the Idea Lab and the programs that they'll eventually create.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. And I think what you just said really encapsulates that, this person would own kind of that whole universe. I just thought that, the first sentence in the overview just read very tactical instead of, someone coming in to be able to own this. So, I mean, I would suggest something like create team programming and engage outreach to increase teen usage of the library.
I like that.
Good.
Yeah.
So that'd be good. Just pop that one in there.
I think Jane probably remembers this from working with Jay Dietz, but the way you describe the position is very tactical. Like Jay really likes lists. He really likes, sort of specific job functions. And when it is more sort of overall, I mean, the descriptions were where Jay and I think, we have the most discussions if we ever work. I haven't worked with him on a description for a while, but that was where most of the discussion was, because in trying to do an overview, he wants it to be very specific. And to me, an overview is more generalized. But I love that sentence you just said, Kim. I think if we make that the first line of the job description, that definitely enhances it.
Mhm.
I agree. Do we need to vote on that as a change, or can we just assume that you'll make the change and then get it into advisory tomorrow, Ryan?
If we're comfortable with the sentence that Kim wanted to add at the beginning, and you guys are happy with the rest of the description as it reads, you can approve the job description with the edit.
All
Could
right.
you read it again, Kim?
Yeah, sure. Create team programming and engage in outreach to increase teen library usage. That what I
You
said?
did perfect, Kim. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be creates. It would have to be creates and increases. No, creates whatever it is, because it's present tense in the next
Creates
sentence.
and increases.
Coordinates, right? Exactly. Just that one teeny weeny little change on the verb.
Creates team programming and engages in outreach to increase teen library usage.
And you're
Perfect, and
gonna
then
keep
coordinates the
the
Yeah.
acquisition organizes.
Great.
You're gonna
I
keep
like that a lot.
Mhm.
as the second sentence.
Yep. Okay, any other changes to the job description? Which shows a ton of great work, by the way. All right, so I'll move that we accept the job description as amended with that one sentence.
A second,
All right, Trustee Davis,
aye,
Trustee Ekberg,
you're muted.
you're muted.
David.
There you go.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
Aye.
aye.
Okay. Trustee Landry, aye. Trustee Maney,
Aye.
Trustee Reagan.
Aye.
Trustee Estani.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Good work. Jana, you worked on beautiful. It really reads well, finally. It's been a long time in the works. Okay, the library facade restoration project. How about Ryan and Janet fill us in, since we don't have Mary with us?
Okay. You want to go, Ryan?
So as all of you already know, The roofers started about 2 weeks ago, and we were told that the adhesive they were using has low VOC and is non-toxic. During the trustees meeting that I was in, where there's a pause for several minutes and I put my mask on, that was the staff coming in to tell me that the smell was making them ill after they had been in the building for half an hour. And somebody had such a negative reaction to it, they didn't feel comfortable driving home. We had another staff member drive them home. So that I think is pretty significant. Janet and I have had, we had a meeting that week because that occurred on a Tuesday. And then we had the construction meeting with them on Thursday. And then we had another one the following week. So, you know, Mary's not here. They were using the word sensitivity a lot at the last meeting, but I don't know how to emphasize this. If you were in the building, it wasn't a sensitivity issue. They think that the elevator shaft, they can't section that off. And they think that the way the ventilation works is that the smell was coming in directly through the elevator and it was filling up downstairs. And I will confess, I didn't have as much of a problem on Tuesday, but Wednesday they were doing the side of the building over my office. And I was I felt dizzy for the next 2 days. So I like to think I'm tough. I know I don't look like it, but if it was affecting me, I can understand it also affecting the rest of the staff as well. And I know, I believe we've had a handful of trustees just stop by the building because we were doing the stone samples and people came. I know Marguerite has come to sign paperwork. Mr. Eckberg has been by. I mean, you can smell the smell when you're in the library, even dissipated, you can smell it. So Janet and I tried to have a timetable with them on when they would be using the adhesive. And we were told that really it was going to be all of next week. That got disrupted somewhat by the snowstorm that was over the weekend because they were going to spend Monday shoveling the snow. And then a lot of people called out sick from the roofing company. So they weren't there at all on Monday. So then Tuesday, they spent shoveling the snow off the roof and they really were only able to work on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the plan was to do it the next week. As you guys probably know, there's an additional snow forecast on Wednesday into Thursday. So this may also affect the timetable. So I have spoken with the contractor, I've spoken with their OPM. I have tried to explore whether or not the roofers could do slightly longer days if it meant that more of the work would get done. What the plan is right now is I know I made an announcement last week about shutting down curbside because we can't have staff work in the building. I made that announcement again this week at the recommendation of the project manager, the contractors, and our architect. And John Parent also doesn't think having the staff work with the smell is a good idea. I mean, they can't. And then when they're actually doing the roofing, it is so loud above the phones that you can't hear anybody on the phones, because I've been trying to answer the phones as well when that's going on. So Kim can kind of work in the children's room a little bit to a limited extent because she's so far away from the roof, and we can have an additional staff member in the teen room. So I went in yesterday because I did payroll and the bills, and I was in my office and I had to have the window open the whole time. So it's a little chilly, but there wasn't as much of a smell issue. And then Kim worked downstairs and Carol worked in the teen room. And we tried to we did limited pickups yesterday. The roofers are not scheduled to work on Saturday. So even though we haven't announced this, we are calling people about pending pickups, and we're trying to schedule them for Saturday. So any members of the public who are watching this meeting, if you have pending holds, you can call us on Saturday. We're going to make an announcement Friday about it and let people know that they can pick up. We are hoping to do pickups next week because we only have 3 days before we hit the holidays. The Mary, if she was here, would tell me that she can't guarantee that we can open next week for curbside. But what Kim and I have talked about doing is trying to run curbside out of completely downstairs. So that's what we're going to try to do. We have suspended the ILL Optima delivery for right now. We have let them know the days we're planning on coming in the building. So they did drop off bins yesterday. We're also emptying the book drop every couple days and checking in quarantine items. I have worked with CW Mars to suspend hold notifications so people are not automatically getting holds when we check in an item, because right now they can't pick it up. If we get calls and somebody leaves a voicemail, I get an email notification. That was something Tom LaFlamme and I set up. And then I've been using Google to call patrons back. So this is in addition to the chat service. I try to follow up with patrons on the phone from home. So I can tell you last week, we got a lot of phone calls because a lot of the people who call us and request materials are not necessarily people who check social media and check our newsletter. So I did recommend that in the phone calls, if I could. I just said, hey, if you have an email registered on the thing, is it okay if I add you to our e-newsletter? Hey, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We make announcements about the status of the library. So generally, we've been helping people. We did, I want to say, like somewhere around 25 to 30 pickups yesterday. So that was, it felt good to get people books after over a week of not being able to. And we've scheduled, I would say, about 40 at this point for Saturday. And then we're contacting people and telling them to call on Saturday about scheduling pickups. I think all of the full-time staff are willing to come in. I don't know if the smell is going to be bad from the day before. We're hoping if they open windows that they can operate upstairs. But if that is not a possibility, we're going to be coordinating the Saturday pickups out of the teen room. So that was a lot of information. That's kind of where we're at as far
you're
as
making it work, Ryan. What, you're trying to work with an unworkable situation, and you're still pulling through.
Yes, yeah, it's there's nothing to be done about this, and there'll be a blizzard anyway, so that'll kind of,
Yeah, that'll stop things for a day or two.
And I have to say, Ryan he's mentioned the noise a little bit and hasn't made a big deal of it. I sat there, each week I go in for an hour and a half meeting. It's like, by the time I leave, it's like, oh, thank God I'm getting out of here. I mean, it's worse than you think. Those folks are really heroes that are putting up with this all day, including Ryan.
yes, here, definitely so. Janet, do you have more to add about the
I have a
project?
couple of financial things to mention.
All right.
So we had to approve one more additional thing because, when they lifted the roof, they're never sure what they're going to find. And I can't remember what they were when they lifted the old roof off, I can't remember what it was that they had expected to find, whether it was wood or whatever, but they found sheets of concrete. So they had to buy different kind of fasteners for the material that was going to go on top. And that ended up being, they're assuming it's going to be about $9,000, but I don't know that we have the final figure of that yet.
No, because I think it was the subcontractor was supposed to give Cal Hess the figure, and then they were going to get back to us. What I've requested is that, so there's going to be a number of smaller change orders, like there are repair work for windows that we've noted that have been damaged. Just over time. It wasn't from the construction. It was just, there's been some cracks. There was some limited wood rot. I know that Mr. Eckberg saw when he was outside. And then the area actually underneath the sign, there's sort of that awning in the old area. When they were painting that, they noticed that the wood was completely rotted away. So I'm making it sound like the building is falling down, but actually a lot of this is when they start work like this, they usually find a multitude of problems. And then there are many, many change orders, potentially if the building is in a state of disrepair. What we're talking about is maybe like 4 or 5 items that they've noted. And the fastener issue that Janet is mentioning is also something that they weren't really super shocked about. At least that was my takeaway.
just
So
they didn't know, they had said a dozen times that they didn't know what they were gonna find when they lifted off the old roof material. They just didn't. And
Yeah.
Sorry.
what?
It's sort of like this surprise package, you
I
know.
know.
I'm surprised it's not worse than it was.
Well, they're experienced in this kind of thing, so they're not phased, obviously.
you know, a couple years ago, Jane came to that presentation that SSV did on the condition of the roof. And I will say, when I'm having a bad day and I go home, I watch that video, and then I'm just really grateful that we're doing this project, because when I see the pictures of the melted brick, you know, this needs to get done. One thing that Janet doesn't know is that with all the rain that we had this weekend, when the roofers were working on Monday and they were bringing up part of the addition roof, they found that the insulation was completely saturated with rain. So that is not supposed to happen. And this wasn't because of what the roofers were doing. We think that this was happening on a regular basis every time it rains.
For years
So,
and years, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you an idea of, I don't want to admonish 80s construction, but I would say when the addition was done, I don't think everything was looked at as far as sort of long-term sustainability. So this project's a big headache. You know, Kim and I are frustrated in trying to get books to people and not being able to do that for the past couple weeks, and probably for a little bit of the short term in the future. But we need a roof. Like, it's really coming across.
Right.
You know, and yes, Janet, it is overdue. I mean, we're finding problems that have probably been problems for a while that we were not aware of as part of the construction. And it isn't really, it's not putting the timetable super far out, but you know, when things come up. And then our main thing is, during the snowstorm, we talked about this, because we're doing exterior pickups, we would have to shut down curbside anyway. So, you know, I know that it seems like we're not able to maintain curbside, and we haven't been, but this Thursday disruption with the roofers would have been a disruption for curbside service as well. So, you know, I am hopeful that we'll have good weather after this week for a little while, and then they can finish what they need to do. They're still pretty much on schedule to complete by early January.
So Ryan, anything the board can do to help out with this that we haven't talked about?
No. Sorry, I would just say the continued, you're aware of the issues that are surrounding the roof. If the public is, we're not really getting feedback from the public that they're upset that we're shut down. I think people are surprised that it took us this long with the amount of construction to shut down. And, you know, that the contractor in particular, he was apologetic, I would say, that we had to shut down at all. They have not had this type of reaction with the smell from the adhesive coming in through the ceiling in the same way and affecting the staff the same way. I honestly don't know how the roofers do it. I don't know how you could be laying that material down and be exposed to it in that way, because it's not insignificant.
No. And they say it's a very standard product, widely used, nothing surprising about it. Yeah.
But if you smelled it, you know, it's not anything you want to breathe.
And they said they'd never had that concern before. They'd never had a problem with the smell going into the building. So
and Kim, Jane, and Marguerite remember this, but when we were we had to do the carpeting downstairs after the flood, and there was an adhesive they had to use for that. Right. And it was the same thing. The smell permeated the rest of the building. And we had members of the public who would come in downstairs to go upstairs, and they would open the door and they would immediately leave. They wouldn't even come in the building. And that was when I knew we had to close. Like it didn't happen once or twice. It happened for like an entire morning. And it was just people couldn't be in the building with it smelling like that.
Oh.
So I don't know why our building is so smelly, but it
It just is. Listen, can we move on to the preservation restriction then?
Can I just add one?
Sure.
There is actually a good piece of news.
Yay.
So I've been keeping track of, the changes that we've approved and went through. And I was concerned that we were getting close to that contingency amount mentioned in the actual warrant article, where we'd have to go back to folks and get an additional approval and stuff. Well, I guess I'd never seen the complete financial reports. We have $172,000 more than we thought, because that's the amount it costs to do the roof on the non-historical part of the building. And the town is picking up that cost. So there's a credit against the construction amount for $172,000. So I was afraid we were getting into that 113,000, but we have an additional 172. I mean, the bid was really very advantageous because it's that much under the amount that we were approved for in the warrant article. So
that's great. Was that John Parent who arranged that, or was it Mary, or who was the?
It was, so that was the warrant, the capital part of the facilities budget for the addition of the roof addition, the 1980s roof. So this is, so we should make this clear, because for people who watched our last meeting or who are paying attention out there to all of this, is that we're talking about money being left in the budget. But if you recall, this was a few meetings ago, I had to come to you and I had to talk to you about the masonry repair work on what they like to call the foundation, but the ground floor, those sort of the holes, right? The shotgun blast, the pox, Mary calls it. So the holes in the building, that they removed the rebar. The capital amount could not cover that because it was specific to the roof. So we should note that is that the reason why I had to come to you guys and ask you, do we want to fund this add-on to the project, is because the way that the capital article was set up was specific to that roof area. Mm-hmm. So this was considered in addition to. So I would just want to note that. So if you're like, why, if there's money left over, did we have to pay for part of it? That was why. Mm-hmm.
So was that facilities then ultimately that is paying for the roof through the facilities budget?
It was out of, so John submits capital.
Yeah.
Now he's going to work with the capital planning committee, but he typically submits capital articles and he works with us. So like the interior, I think next year, we should note that we have a capital article coming up for the library that is recarpeting and painting the upstairs. Mm-hmm. Right? It's been deferred. Jane is nodding because this has been deferred many, many years. So that we're trying to see if that can happen next year. Right? Again, I'm knocking on my wooden desk at home.
Please.
So that is, facilities sort of coordinates that, and then John and I work on it. But John is the one who coordinates the project and hires the I guess it would be like a contractor.
All right. So that's good news, Janet. Thank you for that lovely.
The actual budget for the money we had available for the whole thing was actually the $1 million that was in the warrant article, plus 172,000 of the capital budget. And we're spending more like, we might be up to 750.
Wow. And we've gotten to the worst part of the roof, obviously. Mm-hmm. We've hit the part that will probably be the most out of the plan. But anyway, so great.
We say that because they haven't lifted up every part of the roof yet.
Knocking wood.
Don't jinx it.
We do have anticipated change orders. So some of the project money is still going to be spent. What Janet and I think, and I'm looping us together here, Janet, but I don't think Janet and I think we're going to have to necessarily go to CPC to ask for the additional contingency that was in the warrant article that was supposed to be if there was a massive unexpected cost. Mm-hmm. What I can tell you is, even though we had to shut down because of the smell issue, and that is not great, what is good is that we are not seeing any massive like unexpected problems.
Right.
So I can tell you that's what Mary would tell you if she was here. She would say, let's look on the bright side.
Look at the
So
positive.
that is sort of where we're at with that. That's the good news, is that we haven't found anything that is a big problem.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for all your work on that, Janet, especially. And while we're on the subject, how about the preservation restriction? Where are we on that?
Do you want to talk about it, Ryan, or? I'm tired of talking.
So Janet and I had a meeting with Andrew Mills and Freddie Gillespie, and the gentleman's name was Dylan Peacock. Am I
Yes.
remembering that right? And Dylan is from Historic New England. So we had an initial just sort of meeting, and it ended up being a 2-hour discussion. So we were on with them for a while. I'm trying to think of what the takeaways were, Janet, that we would
Well,
want to talk about.
One thing was that when I had looked at the Historic New England website, they said that they did not do facade only projects, that they wanted to preserve either whole buildings or da 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 da. Well, it turns out with the meeting with him, they will do facade only projects. Because we were thinking, what are we going to do? Throw in parts of the reading? I mean, how would we conform to, there's not like a dozen different groups out there that we can work with. So we were trying to see if we could conform to their restrictions. Well, it turns out that's not such a big restriction. It's not a restriction at all. After talking to him, it sounded like they were, or maybe it's just his job, or whether it's the organization as a whole, are looking for projects to support. One of the reasons they do that is that, you make a fairly significant contribution, and they use that in their legal fund to fight people who do not conform to the restrictions that have been set up.
Oh, okay.
It's a good organization in a lot of ways. They would help us actually write the preservation restriction. They have experience with these things. They don't have experience with municipal buildings, though. So there were some pluses, but that will be an expensive option.
Is that the $60,000 one?
That would be, as it turns out, a modest or an under count of what it would probably end up being. He thought it would be tens of thousands more than that.
Ouch.
Yep.
I have a case of sticker shock. I have to say it again.
And the annoying part is that what we would be funding is future lawsuits against us, potentially, if we did not conform to the restriction. And, I don't think we have any intention whatsoever. We can't speak for the decades of people after us, but why we would take one of the only historic significant buildings in town and not conform to that would be, boggles my mind. But in any case, at least it's an organization that does exist that we probably could go with. But the other takeaway is that it would take a long time. I mean, this guy particularly lives in Rhode Island. He's not allowed to come to Massachusetts. They do have people that are in Massachusetts, but it sounds like anything to do with them is going to be pretty protracted, mostly because of COVID.
So the funding for this will come out of the amount of money that's been designated for the entire project, or will that be in addition? And what's the source of paying him? Is that CPC going to pay for that?
It's a
Want
question.
me to take this, Janet?
Sure. Do you know
Sorry.
more?
No, because Freddie and I have talked a little. So let's say that the Library Board of Trustees is in agreement and wants to have Historic New England hold the preservation restriction. So we talk with CPC. CPC is also in agreement. An endowment amount is decided upon. This would then have to go to a town meeting.
Right.
This is sort of what I've heard from CPC. And then it would be one of the CPC warrant articles. at
What
town
happens if
meeting.
it doesn't pass?
That is a question that
Yeah.
I would have to talk to Aldo about. I think
But
I don't
the
know.
actual funding of it, if it came to let's say, I'm choking over these dollars, 70,000. I think there's a question, but I think it can still come from the project money. But the other question is whether it has to go to town meeting or not. And Freddie's pretty sure it does. But I thought the real positive of the meeting is that we all talked this through. We all know what issues are out there. We all realize it's going to take a while. So it's not an adversarial thing at all. It's not like, why aren't we doing it? It's just, there's a number of things. So I asked this guy what other organizations hold these things, because he knows what his competition is out there. And he only mentioned one, which I've looked into, that doesn't seem appropriate at all. And then the Mass Historic Society, is that the name of it? Yeah.
So Janet is mentioning Janet's mentioning an organization called Preservation Massachusetts.
Right.
So that was the other organization that she and I have sort of looked into, which again it doesn't seem like they do a majority of municipal property or hold library restrictions. And the other one is the Massachusetts Historical Commission, which is the state agency. So Freddie knows somebody there and had a conversation with them, and she was told that they don't hold municipal preservation restrictions.
Or no additional ones. They hold
no additional ones.
They weren't looking to hold additional ones.
They hold about 300 of them. I think it's 300 of them statewide, and they're on pretty established historic structures. A lot of them are in Boston, so you can imagine like churches they want to protect,
like Trinity, I think. Yeah.
So we would. It turns out that let's just hypothetically say you guys want to have Historic New England hold the preservation restriction. So we work with the town's attorney, Alder Cipriano, and they work with their attorney. They draft language that you then look at and approve, CPC looks at and approves, right? It then needs to go to the Massachusetts Historic Commission, also for approval. So this is part of the timeline. It takes a significant amount of time because MHC might come back with notes, and then you have to get everybody back in the room again to talk about it, right? So what we are trying to see if there is any, it doesn't seem like generally Historic New England or Preservation Massachusetts or land trusts, I think that was another thing that was put out. There was a Worcester Land Trust that might hold it because they do conservation restrictions, which is similar, but on land, not on property or buildings. So we are trying to explore the option if the Massachusetts Historic Commission would make an exception for us, because we're a municipally owned library. I also don't know if MHC, what we had discussed with CPC during all these talks was a partial preservation restriction, was a PR only on the historic section of the building. I don't know if that's possible. What it seems like is when these things are written, they include the entire envelope of the building, and then you can be more or less restrictive on a particular piece. So it's possible. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ryan. I was just going to say that we do not want the addition restricted because that may go.
Right.
So I don't know if there's a way to have language within the PR that would state that there would be an ability to renovate in the future.
Yeah.
That's
but what we want to protect is the investment that CPC made in the historic building now, the part that's being, revitalized.
Restricted to the facade if at all possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why there was, I understand Historic New England does interior PRs too, but that was never part of the discussion. So, I mean, that's something you as a board can review and decide if you want to make a determination on. But what I will say is, because we have board members who weren't here when this was initiated, this was not ever discussed. We never talked about doing something inside. We only talked about doing outside, and we only talked about doing the historic part of the outside.
Yeah, I don't think we need to worry about doing the inside anymore. They dropped that as a requirement, so.
So what does the town get? I mean, I'm being a person in town meeting. What does the town get in exchange for this $70,000 that they pay for the restriction?
Well,
mean,
they help us write the restriction.
Mhm.
They come out annually and survey the building, make recommendations as to what might need to be done in order to preserve it accurately. You know, they do provide some services, but it seems to be that the greatest portion of the money goes towards the legal fund, which they use against us if we don't conform to the restriction, or against anyone. It's just part of their fund.
All right, okay.
You get the building protected from any sort of long-term construction or a renovation that would like take away from the historic component of the building's original architecture, I would say. So that original piece that was built 100 years ago. I mean, that was why the CPC wanted a preservation restriction, and why the board at the time agreed is that we were doing this construction and we want to make sure that the library building is preserved for another 100 years, or it's really in perpetuity. So that means forever, you know? So the idea is that the structure would never be there. I know there's been somewhat of a history of some historically significant properties in the town being, you know, torn down. And I don't know, I can't predict the future. I don't know that there would ever be a discussion about that happening to the library. But if you think about it from this perspective, the PR protects that. We have an outside organization who would actively fight to preserve the building. So that's part of what you're paying for.
You're sort of paying it forward in a funny way.
Right.
Yeah. So that sounds like you've done a lot of good research on this, and we have to sort of wait and see what you come up with in discussions with the CPA.
Yeah. The concern here is that if we wanted, I'm saying if you as an elected board wanted to make a significant change to the building, right, based on a lot of what we do with sort of renovation, and if we're doing planning and design, which is the initial phase of that with the state, we get public input about what people want from the library. Frequently what you hear, and what I suspect we'd get from doing the strategic planning process a couple times, is that the people want the library to be bigger. That consistently sort of comes up, right? So a bigger children's room, a bigger space for programs and for candidates night. These are things you consistently hear, and I'm sure you've heard from members of the public as trustees. So I think we need to be careful in adopting a PR that would somehow limit the ability to do that in the future. And one aim of that is, I don't think there's a lot of room to change the historic footprint of the 1911 piece of the building. But I think there is some flexibility in looking at the addition long-term and seeing if that is functional and if that is something that can't be reconstructed. Now I'm saying all this, and we just got a new roof, or we're in the process of getting a new roof. So we're not talking about doing this in the short term, right? This is long-term planning. This would be really looking at things many, many years from now.
Okay, that's good. Any other parts of this that we need to hear, or this is our last agenda item for today? Any other business?
Just a quick question. What is our role for the advisory board meeting tomorrow night? To listen and not talk? Is that correct? So
because we're in a joint meeting, you can actively participate. I will be there to answer questions for the advisory board, including the memo that I sent out. It does sound like I maybe do need to prepare a quick addendum just to say that we're exploring the children's librarian issue, right? So that is something I'll bring to their attention. The advisory may have questions about that, and you can participate in that discussion because you're in session. So we'll have to call the trustees to order, Marguerite, and we'll have to adjourn as well. So we can talk to Kathy about that, I think,
Right.
prior to when the meeting starts.
All right.
So you think we're early on the agenda?
I have
6:30?
requested it. If you guys give me a moment, I will see if their agenda should be up on the town's website now. It was not on Monday morning, I should say. I'm sure it was up after that.
And Tim Litt incidentally has posted another entry on the chat, which says, I responded to Ryan's request for support of a proposed ALA grant. Did the grant go in? Was my response helpful?
Yes and yes. And we will hear Mr. Litt in mid-January if the library was awarded the grant. So I will let you know either way. Anybody who wrote a letter of support and members of the board who maybe wanted to but didn't have a chance to, which is okay, I will let you guys know if we didn't get the grant. I will say ALA grants are extremely competitive. I've tried a couple years to get this graphic novel one, which is $4,000, and that one we have not been awarded. So just don't get discouraged. It's because there are thousands of libraries that apply to ALA grants. So
Just keep
you're,
trying.
yeah. I will say Mr. Litt's letter was very good. So thank you for your contribution. We are first on the agenda
Yay,
for
thank
the
you.
advisory
Kathy.
meeting.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
so if
There'll
there's,
be a link sent out because we don't have that yet, right?
Yes, I can do that.
the what sent out? Sorry, I missed it.
The link.
Oh, the link. Yes. Okay.
It will probably be similar to what you guys got today, is the email with the Zoom information, if that's okay. Because I think they didn't add you as initial panelists because it was an advisory meeting. Typically, boards don't meet jointly with advisory, but I think we should, especially because we are gonna have an add-on. So,
Okay.
All right, everyone. I think that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.
Going to adjourn?
Yes. Move to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded.
Okay, Trustee Davis,
Aye.
Trustee Ekberg,
Aye.
Trustee Landry, aye. Trustee Maney,
Aye.
Trustee Ryan.
Regan.
Oh,
Aye.
sorry. Shh.
Look at
Yes,
Ryan.
it's been a long morning. Okay, and Trustee Yastani.
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned and